What's up, Geogon fans? It's D Hart. Today I'm going to rank the strongest Geogon for the Bakugan Pro trading card game. Out of the 81 Geogon that's been released that I have today, I'm going to rank from weakest to strongest, 81 to number 1. And before we start, I'll recap really quickly what a Geogon is and how you use it. So we'll just take Aqua Swarmer for example. This is a card, an action card type card that you have in your hand. You can have up to 3 copies of a Geogon. Your whole deck can consist of Geogon as long as you have no more than 3 copies and the Geogon follow the factions of the Bakugan that you chose for your team. How you use a Geogon is this. On your turn, after you roll your Bakugan, if you land on a core or if you miss, either way it doesn't matter, you can pay the energy cost that you see up here, turn those energy over to signify that you're going to pay for it, and then what you do is you grab that Geogon. This is not the same Geogon as the card, but just for the example. And what you do is you put down your Geogon card from your hand. You have it, you paid for it, you use it. Then what you do is you find a core that you want to pick up on the matrix. You do this alone, your opponent just watches, and it has to be taller than 1 card length away, and you just drop it. And so this symbol on the bottom tells you where the magnet is on the Geogon. They all have that symbol. So that's where you're going to drop it, face down. So you hold it up 1 card length away, and then you drop it. If it picks up the core and opens, you get to play that Geogon's card for the turn. It's a substitute for your Bakugan. So now that in Swarmer, we're pretending this is Swarmer even though it's Insectra. Now that Swarmer is opened, he has 600B plus the core that you landed on, and we'll choose a core that actually identifies with Aquos. Now he's at 1000B. The reroll means that you can re-drop this Geogon if you miss with it, and you're at 1000. 2 energy down, you're at 1000B, and you can play your turn with the Geogon. When the turn is over, if you win, the Geogon does his damage, and your opponent flips cards from their deck equal to the damage until they stop it. If Swarmer loses, what you do is put Swarmer in your discard pile, and then you take the damage from your opponent. And that's how a Geogon works. It's a substitute for your Bakugan whenever you want to use it. One of the strong points about using the Geogon are that they can steal cores. So if you wanted to drop Swarmer onto your opponent's magic shield, you could do that. And even if you lose, you get to place that magic shield that you stole from your opponent's side of the matrix onto your side. So no matter what, they're a core steal along with the bonuses that you get from the Geogon. And I want to show you really quickly how I calculate how they're strong. I'll only do this one time, and then you'll know how the methodology works as I go through the list of all the Geogon and give you the ranked number in which I rank them. So this is how you do it, and I'm going to use a calculator to show you. We'll use Aqua Surturan right here, 7 cost for 2000B and 12 damage. So what I do is this, I take the B power, if you haven't already figured this out yourself, the B power plus the strongest core that Geogon can land on. In many cases, if they don't already have a core bonus on the card, it's going to be this magic shield for 650, and that's what you'd have on your team. So we're going to add 650 to all these Geogon, unless their card has a better bonus than this magic shield. So 2000 plus 650 equals 2650. Now what we're going to do is we're going to divide, before we divide, we're going to subtract what your opponent would get if they were just playing a Bakugan and not playing a Geogon, because the Geogon cost energy, and just rolling your Bakugan onto a core costs no energy, it's free. And what I like to use as a base comparison is 1500B. 1500B that your opponent would get, maybe on average, give or take more or less. The stronger the Bakugan that your opponent's playing, the weaker your Geogon are always going to be. But just to compare, we're going to use 1500. So your opponent got 1500. We're going to subtract 1500 from Surturan's 2650 minus 1500. That's what the opponent's Bakugan got. We're left with 1150. Now what we're going to do is that's the B power that you got for 7 energy. Essentially, you paid 7 energy for 1150. What we're going to do is divide 1150 by 7 to see the cost per 1 energy, how much B power you get. Aqua Surturan for 1 energy gets 164B. As you all know, there are action cards that give you 1 energy for 200B, 1 energy for 300B, And that's where we talk about Geogon not necessarily being very strong. So we're gonna see which Geogon are stronger than regular action cards that you can play, which Geogon are stronger than the other Geogon, and the best ones that you should get for your deck. And another quick note about why Geogon may or may not be strong. The energy efficiency is usually less than an action card. However, you always get a core steal. When you drop a Geogon, you're always stealing a core, and you have to factor in the cost of what it would be to steal a core as well. Some action cards cost 3 energy to steal a core, others cost 2, so that's priced in as well to the argument that Geogon are strong. And another thing too is your opponent, even though you're getting a worse cost ratio with the Geogon, they might not have an action card that gives them B power in their hand. They just might not have one. And so you're also running that chance that even though you're getting a bad efficiency trade for playing a Geogon, your opponent has a chance to not be able to respond to that Geogon play, even though theoretically you made an inefficient play by using a Geogon. Your opponent could have heroes in their hand. They could have a gear that doesn't also reach the efficiency of what a Geogon could. When it comes live to actually play a Geogon and we think that they're weak, it turns out that your opponent might just not have a response. And even though you played a weak play, it's better than what your opponent could have done to catch up in B power. So keeping that in mind, we're gonna go through now weakest to strongest Geogon. All right, starting from the bottom, going along with the methodology that I just showed you, if we play Aqua Swarmer, he lands on a magic shield. His B power is 1250. You've paid 2 energy, but your opponent's at 1500 and you used 2 energy to get to 1250 and you're still not as high as your opponent. If you subtract 1500 from the 1250, you have a negative number, a negative 250, and then you divide that negative 250 by 2, that gives you a negative 125 for the B power. So Aqua Swarmer is terrible. He has a 1 energy to negative 125 B power ratio. Absolutely terrible. And that puts him at the worst Geogon that you could possibly use in the Bakugan trading card game. Don't go get Aqua Swarmer, whatever you do. Now that we understand what that looks like, we're gonna go through the rest of these guys pretty quickly. But wait, Aqua Swarmer may have a redeeming quality, and this is not a focus of what I made this video on in this comparison list, but we have to call it out because it matters. There are such things as damage wins. You could play from the Pyrus faction cards like Midas Indius and Mac that change the condition of the battle to the highest damage instead of the highest B. And so a card like Aqua Swarmer, it has a terrible B power for the cost, but it's got 9 damage. And if you're using this card in the Aqua's faction to go against an opponent that now used a card to make damage wins the victory condition, he has 9 damage. You could choose a Fire Fist, drop your Swarmer because you know that you have to. On a Fire Fist, he's at 15 damage and it costed you 2 energy. So let's just pretend that somebody going for damage wins is going to be at 12 damage. Anywhere from 10 to 15, let's just call it 12 for the sake of using this comparison. If your opponent's at 12 and you paid 2 to be at 15, 15 minus 12 is 3. You paid 2 energy for 3 damage. That is not a good efficiency rating for energy to damage. It probably should be 1 energy for 3 damage because there are many action cards that'll give that to you. Some dual faction cards have 1 energy for 4 damage. And so Swarmer could be a counter to damage wins. However, it's not that great of an efficiency trait if you're following the logic here. So I'm not gonna call that out for every single Geogon, but you have to consider it. And then when we see a Geogon that has a really good damage wins potential, like crazy damage, we'll call that out and let you know that that's a Geogon for damage wins. Okay, so goodbye Aqua Swarmer forever. Then we have Heos Mutisect. Heos Mutisect is the second worst Geogon, and he's coming in at an energy to B power ratio of 1 energy for minus 50 B. You can use a Green Fist to do Frost Strike, and if you want to do some sort of damage something, or if you know that you won the battle, maybe you've already won the battle, maybe your opponent couldn't even open their Bakugan, and so you want to do some nasty damage with this Frost Strike. You could land purposely on a Green Fist, and it'll give you 9 damage. It only costs you 1 energy. It'll give you 9 damage. Your opponent didn't open, so you're already going to win. You'd have to factor that into the phases of the battle and play it at the right time. Then you're going to do 9 damage with 3 Frost Strike, meaning that your opponent's defensive cards, their flip cards, are going to cost 3 more energy than the printed energy on the card. So if a flip card costs 2, your opponent's going to have to pay 5 to stop Mutasek's 9 damage. So we got to think about that as well in this cost. But in this ranking list of pure B power, using this Geogon to win a B power battle, he has an energy ratio of 1 to -50. You're not even getting up to 1500, and your opponent can be ahead of you even after you paid 1 to use Mutasek. So again, that's what we're going with. And that makes Mutasek the second worst Geogon through this lens. Next up, with a cost ratio of 1 energy to -16B, is Arliss Surturin. But if you win, you get to draw 3 cards. So that's awesome. You're probably not going to win unless your opponent already missed. But if you do, you're drawing 3 cards. That's his benefit here. But for B power, he stinks. Next is Arliss Insectra, who has a ratio B power of 1 energy to 16B. He has 6 damage. You can land on a Fire Fist and be at 12 and try to compete with your opponent that way. But we're assuming your opponent is going to be at 12 for damage wins, and you've already spent 3 energy doing it. They have spent 2 or 4, so that could be helpful. Next up, Aquos Manticore. He has a trade of 1 energy for 16B as well, and is not very good on damage wins. Next up, Aquos Arliss Stardox, who has a trade-off of 1 energy for 25B, and is getting up to 10 damage on a shield, but your damage wins opponent is already more than that, so you're probably not going to win damage wins that way. Next up, Heos Arachnia has a trade-off of 1 energy for 25B. 6 damage means he's getting up to 12 for B power, but you've already spent 2 and your opponent's at 12 for free. Then it's Ventus Skyhorse, who has a trade of 1 energy for 50B. Then it's Heos Slugler, who has a trade-off of 1 energy for 50B, 6 damage. The next 4 Geogon actually have the same energy cost, energy ratio, 1 energy for 50. So we have Heos Insectra, 1 energy for 50, but oh my goodness, he's got 22 damage. So if it's the 5th turn, your opponent plays a damage wins card, you've saved your energy and you have Insectra in your hand, you play him, you win the damage wins, and you're doing 28 damage to your opponent. Or you don't even land on a core like that. Maybe you landed on a magic shield, whatever it is, I don't know. If you knew you were gonna win damage wins, you would land on a Fire Fist or a Green Fist. So you'd do anywhere from 25 to 28 damage. So he is damage wins, B power he stinks, damage wins. This guy, if you can get to 5 energy, will win you any damage wins battle. After him, it's Pyrus Arcleon, trade-off of 1 energy for 50B. He has double strike, so he'd be doing 4 damage, unless you were doing, well, damage wins, you'd be at 8. You can't use double strike to win damage wins. But if you did win with 8 damage, you double that, and he would do 16 damage to your opponent. But his damage is terrible, and his B power is terrible. He gets 1 energy for 50B. I don't know how you're going to win with Pyrus Arcleon unless your opponent just misses and you use him as a sub to do a lot of damage. Then we have Darkest Monstropod, who has 10 damage, but a B ratio of 1 to 50. 1 energy for 50B. You could land him on a Fire Fist and be up to 16 damage. 16 minus 12, because your opponent has 12, is 4. 3 energy for 4 damage is a bad trade, but if your opponent doesn't have action cards in their hand to further increase their damage, Monstropod could help you win a damage wins battle. For B power, probably not. 3 energy, he's up to 1650, your opponent's 1500, and they only have to make up 150B with, the 3 energy that they still have. Very, very easy to do. So Monstropod, bad trade-off. Next we have Darkest Skyhorse, who also has a 1 energy for 50B ratio. He does have 8 damage, so that can help you with damage wins. You'd be at 14, 2 more than your opponent, but 3 energy for 2 damage difference. Not great. Next up, for 1 energy for 75B, we have Darkest Arcleon. 7 damage, that's helpful. 13 damage for damage wins, but 2 energy to make up 1 more damage than your opponent. Not great. Next we have Ventus Monstropod. He comes in at an energy trade of 1 energy for 81B, but he has 20 damage. So that's self-explanatory from the last one. You use him to do a damage wins with 8 energy, If you could cheat him out somehow early, I don't know. He's a damage wins, but he's so expensive that it's going to be so hard to even play him in that situation. Next up, Aquos Amfrog with a ratio of 1 energy for 83 B. Even if that bonus of 1000 B on a Green Fist happens, it's not super helpful. Doesn't have a high damage. Then we have Darkus Diamond Slugler, who has a ratio of 1 energy for 92 B, but he has 15 damage. That could make up there for his cost. He'd be at 21. You'd be 9 more damage than your opponent, who has 12. And they probably won't have cards in their hand to make up a difference of 9 damage outside of their Midas Indius and Max. So if you have 7 energy, he's good for damage wins. Then we have Arliss Stingzer. His trade-off for B is 1 energy for 100 B. 5 damage, isn't that great for damage wins. Platinum Arcleon Pyrus. He has a trade of 1 energy for 100 B. He gets to add a core on a Green Fist, but even using that bonus, does not help as far as being a good card to use in B power. 1 energy for 100 B. Then we have Ventus Swarmer, who comes with 1 energy for 110 B, but he has 15 damage. He would be a damage wins play. Next is Arliss Swarmer, 1 energy for 125 B. He does trigger a team attack if he wins the battle though, so that's a bonus in there. But for 2 energy, landing on a magic shield, he's at 1750. Your opponent's at 1500 or so. You're 250 up, and you've already used 2 energy. So it's not difficult for your opponent to make up that difference. So like I said, 1 energy for 125 B is his ratio. Ventus Mutisect has a 1 energy for 133 B ratio. 8 damage is pretty strong. If he lands on a Fire Fist, he's going to be up to 18 damage. And that's pretty sweet for damage wins. 18 is high, very high. And for 3 energy to get up to 18, so 18 minus 12 is 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 1 energy for 2 damage is kind of a weaker action card, but it's an action card. So if your opponent has those cards, they probably won't have enough to make the difference. So Ventus Mutisect is a good damage wins Geogon, not B power. Then we have Haos Ghost Beast, 1 energy for 133 B. With 4 damage, not very helpful for damage wins. Aquos Stardox has a ratio of 1 energy for 137 B. If you land on a magic shield, you're at 10 damage. You get to steal your opponent's magic shield, which is cool. You're probably going to lose damage wins, but he has 4 Frost Strike in the case that you did win somehow. 4 energy getting up to 2050. Your opponent's 1500 and has 4 energy to make up 400 B. That's really, really easy to do. You're probably going to lose with Stardox, but in the case that you do win, you have 4 Frost Strike, and you're going to do, like I said, if you have this magic shield, you're going to do 10 damage with 4 Frost Strike. Your opponent will not be able to stop that attack, and you'll just get a clean 10 damage. So not strong, but strong if you win, if that makes sense. Next up is Ventus Babadrill, 1 energy for 150 B. He does 1 damage if he wins. It's not strong. Then we have Pyrus Viperagon, 1 energy for 150 B. Not good. 5 damage puts him only up to 11 for damage wins. You're probably going to lose that. But if he's the victor, he gets 7 energy. So think of all the cards you could play from your hand for free. If you just had a bonus 7 energy after you win, you can get out a hero, a gear, increase the damage somehow. He's cool, but his B power trade-off is not super strong, so that puts him on the list like at number 56. Okay, after Pyrus Viperagon, we've got Aquos Viperagon, who also has a B trade of 1 energy for 150 B. On a Fire Fist, he's getting up to 12 damage and then 3 Frost Strike. So you could be right around your enemy when they're doing damage wins and you're up to 12, they're right around 12. And if you manage to win that, you get 3 Frost Strike. It's going to be very hard for them to stop your attack. That's pretty cool. Energy value, not great. He could just be a damage wins potential here. After that, we've got Arliss Amfrog, who also has a B trade of 1 energy for 150 B. Green Fist gives you Shadow Strike, but I'm not sure what's going to happen there because 9 damage is not enough to help you win a damage wins battle. This isn't the right core, but you get the idea. And, you know, getting up to 12, the B power is not going to help you. You're doing damage wins in this case if you're on a Fire Fist, and 12 might put you up there, it might not. But you might be able to tell at this point, this might not sound as bad as it sounds, you know, when people talk about how bad Geogon are. to pay 4 energy when your opponent has already paid 4 with Mac to make the battle damage wins, and maybe they're at 10 or 11, and you play an Amfrog, you steal one of their Fire Fists that maybe you already know is 6, and you're at 12 as well. You're a couple ahead, you've stolen a core and you still win. That could be good, and it all depends on what other cards they have in their deck. If they don't have any other cards that help with damage wins, because they might not, they might have heroes and B-Power, then you're going to win with this Geogon. So in this case, it just depends on what your opponent has in their hand, and that could be good, because not every single time your opponent will have damage increasing cards or B-Power cards. Maybe they're still in their deck. It's kind of a gamble there, but it's not a gamble that means you're going to lose every time. I think the chances are pretty good. So Geogon, maybe better than we think a little bit, more competitive. After Arliss Amfrog, we have Aquos Surturin. He has a B trade of 1 energy for 164 B. That's terrible. He has 12 damage though, and on this core, he's going to be up to 18. 18 minus the 12 that your opponent has is 6, so you're up 6, but it costs you 7 energy. That trade is terrible. 7 energy for 6 more damage than your opponent. You'd have to get up to the 7th turn to even do this anyway. So it's good damage, but it's so expensive that I have a hard time seeing this guy really helping you out. And the B trade, 1 for 164 is not great. Then we have Darkus Arachnia. His B trade is 1 energy for 175. He has Shadow Strike, which means his stats cannot be reduced, and if he wins, he gets to look the top card of his deck and put it on the bottom, or else keep it there. The B trade's not great, the damage is not great. I mean, it puts him at like the 52nd best Geogon. He's meh. Then we have Aquos Montrapod. His B trade is 1 energy for 175 B at 4 damage. He's only getting up to 10 for damage wins. He's also meh. A lot of these guys in the middle are so meh. Victor, if he wins, he triggers a team attack, which means all of the open Bakugan you have on your bench, if you win with Montrapod, get to add their damage to Montrapod's damage. So potentially you're doing a ton of damage when you win with Montrapod. But you'd try to play him when the other Bakugan are open on your bench already, so there's a lot to plan for there. After this, we have Ventus Arcleon. His B trade is 1 energy for 183 B. He's getting up to 12 damage for 3 energy. In the middle of the pack there, he's whatever. We're still not great yet. Until we get to 1 energy for 300 B, none of these Geogon are going to be that great. So Aquos Babadrill, 1 energy for 183 B. If he's landing on a Magic Shield, he's getting up to 8 damage with a Frost Strike. 8 damage is not gonna, it's probably not gonna help you win a damage wins at all. But if your opponent doesn't open, you use the Magic Shield, maybe they don't have any energy B power cards in their hand to beat your 2050, and maybe they're 1700, but they don't have any of those action cards. Then all of a sudden you're doing 8 damage with Frost Strike. That's good, but you're just banking on your opponent not having any response in their hand at the time. And maybe they don't, and that's when this would be great to play. But if they did, you're probably going to lose with these Geogon. After Aquos Babadrill, we have Ventus Slugler. His B trade is 1 energy for 187 B. 8 damage is good. You'd be up to 14 for damage wins. That could put you over the edge of your opponent for 4 energy. They've already paid 4 energy to get to damage wins in the first place with Mac. So that could be helpful. But B power wise, he's stinky. Then we get to Darkish Geoforge Montrapod. This is number 47, so none of these guys are going to be amazing. His B power trade is 1 for 187 as well. 1 energy for 187 B. Damage is 7, he's getting up to 13. Could be a little bit competitive for damage wins. After that, we have Darkest Platinum Stingzer. His B trade is 1 energy for 190. He's one of the new Bakugan Evolution Geogon though, and so he has this core symbol here. And this was what makes him interesting. And I took this into consideration when I did all of this, but here's how it would work. Where's my helixes? So you could land him on this helix. He's at 1500, plus 300 is 1900, minus the 1500 of your opponent, you're at 400 B more, but the 400 B costs you 5 energy. That's a terrible, terrible trade. But you're also removing your opponent's core. That could remove 650 from them, and putting all of that into the equation as well would look something like this. 900 plus 600 is 1500, plus 300 is 1800, plus you add another 650 by removing your opponent's magic shield. That is 1800 plus 650 is 2450. 2450 minus 1500 is 950, and 950 divided by 5 is where you get 1 energy for 190B. So he looks great, right? All of this looks awesome, but it still only comes out to 190B for 1 energy. It's not a great energy trade. But again, you can argue you're taking your opponent's core. You could take your opponent's helix, you can land this guy on your opponent's helix, and then you're taking the core they have, which is a dual core steal, all in one turn with Platinum Stinger. So thinking about it that way, he could be very, very strong just because you're taking the opponent's cores, 2 of them. But if you base it off of how I just explained it at a B power level, for the trade, you're getting 190 B power for 1 energy. It's just, that measure's not great. The rest of it is. So after him, we have Arliss Skyhorse. The B trade is 1 for 192. He has 15 damage, which is huge for a damage wins, but you're on the 7th turn. So if you last that long, play this guy, you would definitely win a damage wins because you land on a Fire Fist from your opponent. If they have that strategy, you're at 21 or roundabout. Even if you don't land on him and you're just at 15, that's still a good chance to beat your opponent. So damage, he's cool. B power, he's not. Then we have Arliss Hyenix. His B trade is 1 energy for 200 B. Now we're getting to the limit on number 44, 44th strongest Geogon. We're getting to where their B power can equal that of a really base action card. 1 energy for 200 B. So that's what we get. His damage would be 3 because you're going to use his B power bonus to get, this core 600 minus 3. But now we're in the guys that can substitute action cards at this point. After that, we have Ventus Viperigon, who also has 1 energy for 200 B trade, and you're landing on a shield to get 5 damage. The shield would give you this 1900, but you're subtracting 5 from 10, so 1 energy, 200 B, 5 damage, if that helps you win. After that, Pyrus Surturin, he also has 1 energy for 200 B, double strike on a magic shield. That's pretty fun. Then we have Darkest Titan King. He's giving us 1 energy for 200 B and 2 damage because you are landing on this helix here. Then we have Ventus Talon, who's giving us 1 energy for 212 B. And if you're landing on a helix, you're getting a bonus damage. If you land on this helix, minus 200 B, 5 damage for damage wins on the 4th turn. You could be up to 15 damage for 4 energy. That's a good chance. You're right in there competitive-wise to beat your opponent for damage wins. So Ventus Talon is a good damage wins counter. B power, he's also not terrible. He's in the middle here, 1 energy for 212 B. It's like an action card that also steals a core. Then we have Heos Skyhorse. Also has 1 energy for 212 B. Damage wins, he's not that great, and he does have the Victor team attack. So if you win with Heos Skyhorse, all of your Bakugan get to add their damage to 1 attack. Then we have Heos Arcleon, 1 energy, 212 B. He has a reroll, so if you miss with him, you can drop him again. And with 7 damage, you can get up to 13 damage for a counter damage wins play for 4 energy. And, you're somewhat in there. You're a little bit competitive, so that's nice. Then we have Geoforge Arachnia, Heos. His trade-off is 1 energy for 225 B. 8 damage means that he can be competitive for damage wins. He is expensive for damage wins, though. 6 for 14 is kind of tough. But he has 2 Frost Strikes, so if you're winning on a damage wins, let's say, because B power, he's okay B power, but if you're winning damage wins, you're doing 14 damage and your opponent has to pay 2 extra energy to play defense, so that's getting better. Now we're up to number 37. We have Heos Amfrog, 1 energy for 225 B, 12 damage on a Fire Fist for damage wins. After that, we have Pyrus Talon. His energy trade is 1 energy for 225 B. His damage wins is going to be 11. Don't know about that. Then we have Darkest Stingzer, who has no damage, but his B trade is still 1 energy for 225 B. If you're landing on a shield to try to do damage, you're only going to be to 7. That's not good. You'd be at 7 if you landed on this core either, too. He does have the Victor team attack, so if he wins, all of your Bakugan get to attack. The B power's, getting better, but some of these guys with 1 for 225B, they have more damage and they're better. So like Talon and maybe Amfrog should have been better than Stingzer, just taking damage into account, but that's where I put them in. With Ghost Beast Aquos, he also has 1 energy for 225B. That's when he's landing on this, Fire Fist and getting 2,000. It's because he costs 10. So with the 10 cost, you're waiting a long time to use him. He is sitting and sitting and sitting in your hand. And by the 10th turn, even if you do use him and you're at, 3750B, your opponent has 10 energy to try to close that gap. What's hard though, and what makes these Geogon good, like I've been saying, is does your opponent have enough B power increasing cards in their hand by the 10th turn to get from, 1500, 1800, 2000B to 3750? That's like, if they're at 2000, you still have to make up 1750B. Do they have enough cards in their hand? What if they have some other cards like Heroes or Gears that aren't going to close it, So even though his trade-off for B power is 1 for 225, I just don't think your opponent's going to have the cards to even make this difference. So I think you're going to win. Okay, then we have Aquos Insectra. He has 11 damage, which is really good for damage wins. On the 5th turn, you'd probably lose a couple damage wins from the Pyrus cards that cost 2 with Midas Indius and 4 with Mac before that. But if they're playing damage wins on the 5th turn or on, 17 damage for Insectra is really good. His B power trade is 1 for 230, so that's good too. We're getting a little better. Closer to get me 300, the better it is. Pyrus Amfrog has a B trade of 1 for 237B. With the 6 damage, he's going to be right in there for 12 for B power, damage wins and be competitive. And then he has the team attack Victor. So there you go. Pyrus Amfrog. Pyrus Titan King, 1 energy for 241B as he goes, and then damage wins for 6 energy. If you're in there that long, he's gonna have 16 damage for damage wins. 6th turn to counter, your opponent's damage wins. That's pretty good. 6th turn, hopefully you're in there by then, and then Victor team attack. Then we have, after these guys, Darkest Mutasect, who also has a B trade like Pyrus Titan King. 1 energy for 241B with the 8 damage. That is another good one for damage wins. You're at 14. Your Shadow Strike, so Mutasect stats cannot be reduced. Then we have Darkest Swarmer, who has a trade-off of 1 energy for 243B. 10 damage means he's at 16 damage for damage wins, but that's the 8th turn. So by then, who knows what your opponent is going to have and what they're going to do. What combos they have to get up above 16 damage for damage wins. Then we have Darkest Sluggler. He has a B trade of 1 energy for 250B. He also has Shadow Strike. His stats can't be reduced, and he's getting up to 10 damage. After Sluggler, there's Ventus Amfrog. His B trade is 1 energy for 258B. But for 6 energy and 12 damage, he's at 18 damage to counter damage wins. That's good. It's just expensive. Diamond Montrapod, also 6 energy. His B ratio is 1 energy for 258B. 8 damage. He's at 14. And he has a Victor team attack. So these guys could all be competitive damage wins counters. And we have Arliss Mutasect. 1 energy for 262B, 7 damage means he's at 13 damage for damage win counter, and he costs 4. So that's right when your opponent can play Mac for the first time and get to damage wins. So that's a good counter, 13 damage. You might be able to tie your opponent or get 1 ahead. Arliss Titan King is next. He also has a B ratio of 1 energy for 262, but his damage is worse than Mutasect. So Mutasect should have been better than Titan King. After those two, we have Aquos Sluggler, who also has a B trade of 1 energy for 262B, and his damage is 4. So actually, he should have been worse than Titan King right here, than Mutasect. That's how that would have gone. Then we have Ventus Diamond Viperagon. He has a 1 energy to 265B. The others had 262B. Big difference there. And he has 15 damage. So Shadow Strike means it can't be reduced. There is a card in the Pyrus Darkest faction that reduces the opponent's, like if I played it, it would reduce my opponent's B power by 5, and then it switches the win condition to damage wins. That would put him at 10, but he has Shadow Strike, so he would stay at 15. If I didn't land him on a Fire Fist, because my opponent already did damage wins and I played him whatever, I'd still be at 15. I couldn't be reduced. It's a good card, but he costs 9 energy, and are you even going to get up to 9 energy before the game's over? Like, that's super late game right there. So 3500B though, it's like I've said before, if you land on a Magic Shield, 9th turn, you're at 4150. Your opponent could use better action cards that have a better trade of 1B for 265, 1 energy for 265B, but do they have enough to get you to get past your 4150? At that point, they probably don't. So even though the trade isn't as great, you're probably going to win at that point. These are like late game guys that are going to be really hard to beat. It's the same for Hail, well, it's not the same for Hail Swarmer actually, but his B trade is better. He has 1 energy for 266B, and you get to add a core from the field when you land on a Magic Shield. It's one of the new Bakugan Evolution Geogon. So he's at 1650, you add a core, another 650 from there, you're at 2300. And that trade-off, 2300 minus 1500 divided by 3, that's like 1 energy for 266B. And you've taken a core from your opponent. So he's actually stronger than this because you have to, you know, base it on the fact that he's taking an opponent's core. And he has 2 cores. That's pretty cool. But, you know, 1 energy 266B puts him right here at number 20. So that was number 20. This is the top 20 now. Top 20 Geogon. Here we go. These are the guys that you really want to go look for if you can. Top 20. We have Ventus Geoforge Talon. B trade of 1 energy for 270B. It's going to get up to 12 if you need to do damage wins on the 5th turn. And Victor, he triggers a team attack. Geoforge Stingzer has a B trade of also of 1 energy for 270B. Damage is not great. You're not going to be competitive for damage wins at all. But if you win, you get to draw 2 cards. So that's pretty neat. And it's a good, you know, it's getting better. 1 energy for 270. So they're getting more and more competitive now. Geoforge Arcleon, all these Geoforge guys, they were strong when they came out. Strong-ish. He has a B trade of 1 energy for 278B. With 3 damage, it's not good for damage wins to compete. It's expensive for a 7 cost, but he gets double strike, so he'd do 6 damage. And you know, your highest, you're getting up to 3450. Oops, 3450. So if your opponent has the cards to make up that difference, they could do so somewhat efficiently, more efficiently than you could. So we'll see. You know, you don't know at that point if they have those cards or not. Then we have Arliss Geoforge Titan King. Now his B trade is 1 for 290. If he's on a Magic Shield, he gets 5 damage, so he's at 8. That's not enough to counter damage wins. But you know, if you're going to be 2950 and your opponent doesn't have the cards to make up the difference, 8 damage is still pretty good, really good. And he's also doing a Victor team attack, so it's his 8 plus all the other Bakugan on the bench. That could end up being a lot of damage if you win on the 5th turn with Geoforge Titan King. Also with a trade of 1 energy for 290B is Stardox, Pyrus Stardox. He has a reroll. You can drop him again if you missed the first time. Low damage, not going to help with damage wins, but getting more efficient with the B power. Now here's the first Geogon. This is top 14. This is the first Geogon that has a B trade of 1 energy for 300B, just like some of those good base action cards that you can use in your deck. 1 energy, 300B. He has 7 damage, so he can get up to 13 to counter damage wins on the 5th turn. That's not terrible. You're still in your opponent's Fire Fist, hopefully, if you're going to do that. And then, you know, he's getting up to 3,000 on this Helix core, doing 1 damage if he wins that way. But again, 3,000 on the 5th turn. Your opponent would have to use their 5 energy to get 1,500B. You know what? I don't think they're going to have the cards to do it. I just don't. I don't think they'll have all those cards, and that's going to make these Geogon better than we think. Ventus Insectra. 1 energy for 300B. The damage is awful unless you use this core that we've been using for Helixes, where it's giving you 5. So that's actually 10 damage. Not competitive in most cases to counter damage wins, I wouldn't think. And then B power, you know, he's gonna go up to 2400. But by the third turn, you know, your opponent has 3 energy to also match 900. Action cards could do that. But we're getting down to efficient trades here. 1 energy for 300B. So these are good. I mean, these are good Geogon. These are some of the best. It's the same with Aqua Stingzer. 1 energy, 300B. And he also has the 8 damage. So landing on a Helix, you could compete damage and B power. It'd be less efficient with this core. For damage, or B power obviously, but 13 damage or 14 damage, and then getting up to 2200 or 2400 B power. 1 energy for 300B. Good. Then we have Darkest Ghost Beast, who has 1 energy for 307B. 7 energy. Sort of a mid-game play, getting up to 11 damage, not great competitive-wise for that, and has a reroll. And Ghost Beast is actually a hard model to land sometimes. He's looking like this. He's the barrel. This is Aquos, but he's the barrel. And if you drop him on, you know, the symbol here, I've tried it a lot before, and he can just be hard. So let's just try it. 1 card length away. Well, I guess hard is relative. That wasn't that hard that time. That was actually pretty easy. But whatever. 3000B though. So even though he's 1 energy for 307, on the 7th turn, you're 3650. If your opponent has Evolution Bakugan in play, Evos, you know, action cards, it could be tough for them to beat that. And maybe you stole their Magic Shield too. But at a base level, 1 energy for 307B. Okay, then we have Diamond Stingzer. His trade-off is also 1 energy for 307, 7 cost. He's like basically the same as Ghost Beast, except he has 1 more damage, and Ghost Beast has a reroll. So those guys are both up there as number 11 and number 10. Stingzer is number 10, top 10 Geogon, along, you know, Ghost Beast. Then we have number 9, Aquos Hyenix. His trade-off is 1 energy for 310B. He only has 1 damage, so 5th turn you're not going to do anything damage wins. You're going to be at 3050B 5th turn though. So your opponent has, you know, 5 energy to make up 1550B. And he gets a Victor Team Attack. It's actually strong. You could do a lot of damage early with this guy if you've won, you know, have a couple Bakugan open by the time you play him on the 5th turn. Then we have Heos Hyenix. His trade-off is 1 energy for 316B. It's good. It also has 1 damage. I think, you know, they know that these Geogon are getting a lot stronger B power wise, and so the damage is reduced. They both have a Victor Team Attack. Their stats are really similar, but Hyenix is cheaper to play. You can play him quicker, and you get more B power for the energy. Heos Hyenix is definitely better. Then we have number 7, Aurelus Babadrill. He is from the Ultimate Vilock toy. He has a 1 energy for 337B. He gets that bonus on a Magic Shield. Damage is not high enough to compete damage wins for the most part, I wouldn't think. But if you land on a shield, you can do double strike. I don't know that you would do that because you would lose B power wise. You'd go for Magic Shields. Take your opponent's Magic Shield. This is cool because you're not dependent upon, you know, a weaker core. This is a strong core, so easily incentivized to take your opponent's core, and he's getting 1 energy for 337B. Then we have Heos Talon. He also has 1 energy for 337B. He can land on a Magic Shield and have high B power and still get 13 damage, but your best B power is going to be on that Helix and get up to, what is that? 22 and then 2800 on the 4th turn. 1 energy for 337. That's what it comes out to. He's good. He's number 6. Top 5. We have number 5 Ventus Ghost Beast. His energy to B is 1 energy for 341B. 6th turn, you're going to be super high. You're 3550 with 5 damage. I just think that your opponent on the 6th turn, if they're at 1500 and you're at 3550, you're 2000 B ahead of them. Even though they could do some efficient energy to B powered trading cards, maybe better than Ghost Beast at 1 for 341. So many numbers. I don't think they're going to have all the cards in their hand to do it. I just don't at that point. So Ghost Beast is going to help you win. He's good. Good Geogon. Then we have number 4, Insectra in the Auralus faction. He's also from the Ultimate Vilock toy. His trade-off is 1 energy for 350 B. And he's 1 energy. I mean, you can play him the first turn, and you're essentially getting a Core Steel action card that gives you 350 B for 1 energy. You get to re-roll him if you miss the first time. The damage isn't high, but it's not high because he's got such a good B-power trade-off. Like, this is a really good card. It's a really good action card. It's a Core Steel, high action B-power for the cost. He's awesome. Number 3, Ventus Hyenix. He has a trade of 1 energy for 365 B. He's got 15 damage. The only problem is you got to wait till the 10th turn. So even though his efficiency and his trade-offs are awesome, he's like crazy late game. Maybe you could tease him out with some Pyrus cards that let you play cards for free. Maybe, I don't even know what else. That's about it. You just got to wait until the 10th turn to play him if you last that long. And then by then, I'm confident you're going to win. Your opponent's not going to get up to 5150 very easily unless they have some monster combos and plays in their hand, which they could, but I mean, this is good. Then we have number 2, Pyrus Insectra from, well, he's not from anything special, huh? He's just himself. 5 energy, 2800 B, 3 damage. His energy trade-off is 1 for 390. That's dang good. And he's a 5 cost. You can play him mid-game. So the 5th turn, you're at 3450 B. Your opponent has to make up like 1900 B with 5 energy. And your ratio is 1 for 390 with him. So it's not inefficient. It's good at that point. Like, Pyrus Insectra is a good Geogon to use if you're playing the Pyrus faction. And then number 1, I think everybody already knew it. We've known it for a long time. He was one of the very first Geogon. It's Darkus Hyenix. On the first turn, 1 energy. He's going to get up to 1950 B and 4 damage. With Shadow Strike, his stats cannot be reduced. And he's great because he is the only Geogon that gets an energy trade-off, energy to B ratio above 400. It's actually 1 energy for 450 B. And it's simply because on this Magic Shield, you're at 1950. If you subtract 1500 from 1950, you paid 1 energy to get 450 B. It makes him the best. All else similar, it makes him the best Geogon. And something to do on the very first turn, which is really cool, because unless your opponent is playing Sync and can get a free 1000 B for 0 energy on the first turn, to play this guy, you're almost always going to win the first battle. However, new Bakugan, I should say, are getting a lot higher in B power. So I've used 1500 as my base to make these all comparable, and so this list is accurate here. But as good as Geogon are now, are not good anymore, because like you could play a Bakugan that would get up to 1700 on the first roll, that could get up to 1850. And at that point, you're paying 1 energy for another 150 B more than your opponent. That's not a good trade-off. And if your opponent had a 1 energy for 300 B in their hand, they would easily get above you. So the stronger that Bakugan get, the worse that the Geogon get. And unfortunately, the new Geogon that are coming out in Bakugan Evolutions are not high on this list. Like, let's just count really quickly until we find the first Bakugan Evolutions Geogon. Like, okay, we'll do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So the 20th strongest Geogon is the Bakugan Evolutions Geogon, the newest one. And he's strong because he's doing a Core Steel. So Core Steels are strong no matter what. This is like a double Core Steel. And that could itself be ranked maybe highest on the list, because like we know what the energy trade-off is. We already did that with Swarmer. It was 1 energy for 266 B, but you're stealing 2 cores. So that's what these new Geogon are giving us some of the time, are Core Steels. I hope this was helpful. I hope you saw the utility of what Geogon can do and get a sense of how you can measure for yourself if you want to use a Geogon or not. And I think I've convinced myself even more so that Geogon are better than I thought, because your opponent's ability to counter a Geogon for the energy efficiency, they just might not have those cards in their hand. They might not have the action cards that give them the B power to do the combos right when they need it. Maybe they use those cards the turn before and they didn't draw enough new ones, and all of a sudden you play this guy, and even though the trade-off isn't that great, you're still higher than them and they have nothing to do about it. So that's what I think about Geogon. Let me know what you think. Which Geogon are your favorite? Which ones do you like to use the most? Because again, a lot of these depend on your strategies. Let me know in the comments, like and subscribe. I'm gonna keep doing videos like this, and we're gonna dissect this Bakugan game and try to show people how awesome it is.